Hello, my name is Axel Ramirez, and today we'll be talking about the man who changed the world, Steve Jobs. So, a scholar is described as a specialist in a particular branch of study, especially the humanities, a distinguished academic. Lucky for us, the 20th century, we were introduced to somebody who would change humanity forever, and that man is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs invented the technology that has revolutionized the entire world. He was most definitely a scholar, and he achieved this through perseverance. Steve Jobs really thought that if he set his mind to something that he was going to be able to achieve it, and this was evident since through a lot of hardships in his life, he always realized that there were certain people that he cannot let down, and because of that, he was able to overcome many hardships. However, being a scholar is all about being the best at what you do, and some prime examples of that are Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. However, Steve Jobs was not only the best at what he did, Steve Jobs paved the future for generations to come with his inventions. Therefore, I will speak about who Steve Jobs is, the technology he developed, and the future that he created. You most likely have an iPhone in your pocket, maybe a MacBook at home. I guarantee that if you don't, then at least you know somebody who does. And Steve Jobs was the man who created all of this. But who was he? Steve Jobs is an inventor and a scholar who always was searching for more. And in an article by Mary M. Crozon, she states, Jobs perceived patterns and evoked certain images about possibilities. And this is something that directly ties into who he is and what his inventions were about. Steve Jobs worked incredibly hard to turn his ideas into reality. And even though there were failures, he never gave up. So in an article titled, Review, A Flawed but Innovative Businessman, Hemant Kamakia states that Steve Jobs was given up for adoption at birth. Later on, in many speeches, Steve Jobs spoke about how this clearly was fated into that he was going to overcome any hardships that were to come his way. And Steve Jobs recognized then that there were people who loved him, which was when he was adopted, and he realized that he did not want to fail them. This caused him to really overcome the challenges that were ahead of him. And this is how the beginning of Apple came to be. Apple was made through Steve Jobs' incredible mind. In an article titled The Leading Edge, Laurie Restino wrote, most interesting about Jobs' story is that his work was an evolving refinement of his aesthetic. And as I was saying, Steve Jobs' aesthetic is something that was insanely hard to attribute to just any thought because it was literally everything that was inside of his head and he just wanted to make it a reality, and which is exactly what he did. He got all of his thoughts and was able to process them and make them reality, which is how nowadays, when you think about stuff that's so simple as the font for Apple, this was actually developed because Steve Jobs dropped out of class and just decided to attend a random calligraphy class, and he really liked the writing, and this is where we found the font that we now use in all of our everyday Apple devices. And Steve Jobs used a lot of his youthful thoughts and the perseverance of what he created. And this is evident since, technology nowadays seems to always revolve around Apple. And so therefore, Apple still seems to be innovating us to the future, but how? An iPhone would seem like something completely out of a science fiction novel to the people of the past. Now it seems like a pretty novel idea, being able to FaceTime somebody. However, back then it sounded like, oh, let me pull out my device out of my pocket and just call somebody from across the world. It would seem like something truly magical. However, Steve Jobs had that idea and he wanted to be able to speak to somebody from across the world, and so he did it. He made it. And so in an article about technology, Tom Valkanis wrote, the computer has penetrated the lives of almost all people on the planet. However, the computer was able to penetrate us so deeply, then the iPhone has completely transformed our lives, our way of living. Even our army has tried to implement the smartphone tech into their systems. In an article titled, Army's iPhone Dreams Clash with Reality, Sandra I. Irwin wrote, the equipment the Army provides is outdated, and in contrast, the iPhone is state-of-the-art and easy to use. Once again, this was all the work of Steve Jobs, who had the idea of connecting us all through a pocketable device, the iPhone. So, the inventor and scholar Steve Jobs was able to change the course of the future through his ideas. And that is the man who created Apple, our everyday devices in our lives. Now I will open the floor for any questions.
What were Steve Jobs' youthful thoughts?
Steve Jobs had the youthful thoughts of being able to bring us all together in his ideas that were almost impossible to fetch. However, he was able to fetch them because he implemented all of his dreams into a reality.
Was Apple Steve Jobs' only job?
Apple was not Steve Jobs' only job. However, he did invent Pixar, which is Pixar Animation. They made some of the great movies that we see nowadays, such as Monsters, Inc.
And lastly, did Steve Jobs leave Apple in good hands?
Yes, Steve Jobs did leave Apple in great hands. He implemented his youthful thoughts and the perseverance of his dreams turned into reality to his best friend and now CEO of the company of Apple, Tim Cook. And therefore, now Apple will always be innovating and creating more than any other.
Thank you.